Welcome to the Brand Intelligence Podcast, a show where we pull back the curtain on some of the world's smartest brands. I'm your co-host, William Tyree, and today we're speaking with my colleague at IntelligenceBank, our VP of Product and AI, Alex Hubbard.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Today we're going to talk about some trends we're seeing in our 2026 Content Trends Report. It's largely based on anonymized, aggregated data from the IntelligenceBank platform, which is really exciting because it's a really big sample size and data set, which is amazing. But first, before we get into that, we ask every guest the same question. If you were giving a keynote address, what would your walkout music be and why?
Oh my goodness, this is such a difficult question. There's so many good walkout songs. You know what? I would probably have to go with Martin Solveig's and Dragonette's Hello. It's a little bit dated at this point, but is such a good song that talks about, hey, it's all about the game. Don't take it personally. I love that.
Awesome. I am going to learn something because that is one that I don't know. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, you might change your opinion about me after you listen to it.
I doubt that. You've got excellent taste. I can't wait to hear a new song. All right, why don't we get into it? In our report, we found that marketing content production increased 85% year over year. And I want to say this was the third year in a row that it had dramatically increased.
Yeah.
And I think we all know why. It's not because like marketing teams are getting 85% bigger. It's because we've got superpowers now. We can just get a lot more done. There was some other interesting things, though. There was also a 68% increase in marketing data generated. I think a lot of that is video, actually. Not all video, but a lot is video. And then the interesting thing is, at the same time, the use of marketing compliance software up by about 32%. And I just have to say, as a person who runs marketing at this company, we've just seen a lot more inbound from marketing compliance folks too interested in it. So anyway, but I know you are way, way closer to customers than I am and to people actually working in these industries. Is that consistent with what you're hearing and seeing in terms of regulatory compliance?
Absolutely. And those numbers, like they're just is such an awesome report. They're so validating for what we are seeing and hearing, not just from customers, but other people in the industry as well. I do think in something you point to, the tension here that nobody's really talking about openly yet is we've had this surge in marketing content creation. Compliance teams, they didn't grow by 85%. Most of them grew from the data that I'm aware of around 10, 15%, if at all. And that's pretty brutal math. And what we're hearing from marketing compliance teams is that they've essentially had to triage. So they're making hard calls about what gets reviewed, and they're having a really difficult time keeping up with just this massive surge of content.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are they doing to keep up with that content surge? And I guess within that, my question is it just specific types of content? Is it like all kinds of marketing content? What are you seeing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the honest answer is to what are they doing to keep up is that we're seeing really two cohorts. The ones that are actually keeping up are ones that are fundamentally changing their operating model, or they're working through how to change their operating model. And what I mean by that is they're moving from regulatory and brand compliance, which can be quite connected, especially if you're operating in a highly regulated industry. They're moving from compliance as this review gate at the end of a workflow process to compliance as infrastructure. So being embedded at the point of creation and during the review process. So when we think about what is that actually, more use of things like creative templates, strategic integrations upstream of the approval process. So if you have marketers, designers working in Figma, writing copy in Microsoft Word, being able to do brand tone of voice checks, disclaimer checks there, even before copy gets to a workflow or an approval process, and then checking for those things later. So it makes everything very efficient. It creates that audit trail and it just ensures ahead of time that everyone's doing everything they can to deal with this content surge. For customers that aren't really sure how to deal with it, they're really struggling right now. And I think it does, as you hinted, it does apply because it's all marketing content. It's video content, it's imagery, it's case studies, it's across the board.
Interesting. I think within that too, like there's definitely a step up by government agencies to monitor ads, right? We first saw it a couple years ago with the UK's Advertising Standards Agency, where you started seeing them roll out some pretty big fines for greenwashing, actually, like big airlines getting their ads taken down and things like that. And then United States now reports are that the FDA is monitoring ads with AI, of course. What's the thought around live content like that for some of these regulated industries in terms of advertising?
Yeah, there's so much going on in this space right now, and it's a real point of tension. And I think it's one of the faster moving areas in the space right now, is when you think about it. So it's 48 states right now have synthetic media laws. And that's not a landscape that most marketing legal teams have fully mapped yet. And then if you take as well, you've got the EU. So you have new stringent AI regulations coming in for the EU in total, and then different regulations based by country. So what we're seeing is that legal and creative teams are having very different approaches to marketing content, especially around video, whereas the creative teams see this as a production efficiency tool. They're able to move faster than ever. The legal teams are really looking at this as a disclosure and liability question. And I think there's a practical nature to this. If an AI edited video, if you're changing a background replacement or AI color grading, that's fine. If, we're talking about an AI generated voiceover that's using a synthetic voice that sounds human, that's triggering a much more careful review process. So what we're seeing is disclosure is absolutely becoming a standard practice among the more sophisticated brands. And not because it's universally necessarily legally required yet, but more so because of reputational risk. Again, especially if you're operating in a regulated industry where there's so much around brand trust, the idea of not disclosing and being exposed is quite significant. So there are brands that I think that are getting ahead of this, and they're going to become the real leaders in how we handle these cases moving forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I want to get back to brand compliance for just a sec
Yeah.
because it's all related. You mentioned video a little bit more. And yeah, interesting. Some data out of LinkedIn that's actually in the report talks about that LinkedIn creators are producing 2 times more video than other formats, and engagement's up yet again, 32%. But interestingly, and I have to say this is probably a good thing, although I don't know how it's being enforced. Like here in the US, 48 US states have laws governing deepfake or synthetic media content, right? I think we've got a long way to go in terms of how it's labeled, like how it's even enforced and things like that. But it's a really interesting thing given what you're talking about and how companies are starting to think about it. Before we kind of segue to brand compliance there, are you, is video review a regular part of a marketing compliance team's purview? Or is that kind of like a new thing for them?
It's a little bit of both, and I think it comes back to throughput. It's a great question because, yes, video is absolutely a part of the marketing compliance workflow and the marketing team remit, but we're seeing such a surge in the amount of content that you can create now, especially around video. And I think that's what's triggering all of these questions and all of these, how do we deal with AI generated content in videos specifically? It's more than copy, right? It's who's in the video. What are they doing? How does this match with a brand? So it's really important now that those brands are looking toward building that disclosure into their workflow and at least having discussions about how do we handle this, whether or not it's just brand trust more generally about AI generated content or, hey, we're all about efficiency. How do we ensure that we're checking for things that we can't have in a video? So, a great example and something that I've seen is if you want to advertise a home loan or a mortgage and you're saying, let's target people in their 30s and having a party in their home. You have to be careful if you use AI tooling. There's probably going to be alcoholic beverages in that, right? Because people are going to be having champagne, maybe a glass of wine. And for a lot of those states and for a lot of other regions globally, you cannot have alcohol in a video when we're talking about advertising for financial services. So that's an example of where, okay, how would a marketing team know that? Where's that education piece? How do we check that AI content and say, hey, it's against our brand and regulatory guidelines to have alcohol in a video advertisement?
Got it. So interesting. Along those lines, some of what we talked about is dealing with the regulatory and legal aspect of brand compliance. But last year, we saw for the first time just this massive surge from, and this is from Google data, in searches for brand compliance software, which I thought was really interesting, but it makes sense. Overall, I think at, say, like mid market enterprise companies, enterprise plus companies, yeah, you're seeing like this big crush where from the top down, people are saying use AI to become more efficient. And then you're not, actually not seeing like that much more come out as much as you would think because it's very difficult in the video arena, for example, to do things that are actually brand compliant if you're depending on how much AI assistance there really is, even things like fonts, right?
Yes.
In video. But I've noticed that on the smaller end of the spectrum, and I'm talking about some cases like tech companies with a few hundred employees, you're seeing cases where they're like, okay, anything goes, just use AI to create it. And boy, some of that stuff is wildly off brand.
Yes.
And I think so it's obvious why people are looking for a way to govern it. What kind of requests are you getting specifically for brand compliance, or what are you hearing on the ground?
Yeah, so brand compliance is actually where we're seeing some of the most urgent inbound right now and the most interest from our clients. And oftentimes, again, it's funny because the driver isn't always necessarily the brand team. It's often the marketing compliance team or sort of a combination of your marketing and legal and risk teams. And again, is what's changed. It's that proliferation of content creators, especially when you're in a smaller org. You have sales teams generating their own social content, regional teams localizing campaigns, and agencies working across multiple channels simultaneously. So there's a real expectation that you know and live your brand guidelines. And so whereas there they used to be this thing that lives in a PDF that only a few people on the marketing team read, we're now seeing the expectation, especially with AI, that that be enforced at scale and automatically. So some of the specific requests we're getting are things like, can you detect when our brand tone of voice has drifted? Can you flag when a claim that we've approved for one market is being used in a market where it's not approved? It's much more sophisticated than, oh, is my logo the right size? That's
Mhm.
still a really important brand question. But again, it's that intersection of where brand meets legal and compliance. Some other examples, again, if you're a global brand operating in multiple markets, services versus trademarks, those are extremely important in sort of your product lines and how they're advertised to customers. Using the correct terms and conditions for a product line in a geographical area. And then, as well, the correct language. So, we have clients that operate across Europe and need to not only ensure, okay, right disclaimer, right product line, right market, and then it's, oh, it also needs to be in this country's language. Everything's the same, but the language needs to be checked for and ensured that it matches the original disclaimer that may have been written in English. So it's quite variable, and it's a place where we're seeing so much demand right now.
That's so fascinating. Getting into it another layer, um, like in the report, we're predicting based on the trends that we're seeing that redesigning these end-to-end content workflows, not just adding these kind of AI point tools, is really where you can unlock a lot of productivity. And I think that at the same time, Forrester's latest landscape report on digital asset management systems described the DAM as the place where content is reviewed, improved, or marked up, along with a lot of other things like asset transformation. So I guess my question for you is, do you feel like DAM is becoming the AI control center for all this in a way, for all these great AI tools that brand leaders and marketing compliance leaders and content creators are getting, or is it somewhere else?
No, I think it's a genuinely fascinating evolution right now, and Forrester is onto something very real. So when we think about what has the dam been, historically, your dam's been your library. It's a place where you go to find things. But what we're seeing now is that the dam is becoming a decisioning layer. And because the dam sits at that intersection of all these things, so we've got content, metadata, rights, approvals, distribution, it's a very logical place to orchestrate AI driven compliance workflows and to become this command center. It's like the example that I often use with customers is if you imagine an asset gets updated, a product image, let's say it's changing because the product was reformulated. In the old world, someone would manually have to hunt down every piece of collateral that was used in that image. And it's even imperfect now with AI tagging in metadata. But in a world where your DAM is genuinely AI enabled, that triggers an automatic cascade. So every downstream asset is flagged, it's re-reviewed, it's reapproved, or it's pulled. It's not just about storage anymore. We're seeing the dam move towards becoming governance infrastructure when it comes to marketing compliance. And we're seeing customers naturally use and want to use the dam as where AI generated content gets its first compliance fingerprint, if you will. So again, having that record of what was it, when was it checked, what version of a regulation was applied, what was actually sent to market. So that audit trail is becoming increasingly important as well.
That's amazing. Man, we're a long way from the concept of DAM as like a fancy place to store stuff and find immediately. Which is actually really great to see that the platform has become just so much more powerful. Along those lines of DAM becoming this action platform that still helps you do all the other things that you would hope to do. I think one of the things that stood out to me from our 2025 report was the big jump in facial recognition usage. You could see a lot of brands get on board with the idea that they can actually use recognition within a dam to help you, say you're running a sports team, right? Make sure that you can easily find like all those images that you have of these players like everywhere, or talent usage rights, right? Making sure that you actually are keeping track of when you have the rights to actually use them, when you need to re-review people and things like that, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
just manually checking all that takes eons. This year, what really stood out to me was actual like AI auto tagging,
Yes.
right? And trees in this image, things like that. And it was an extraordinary jump. I guess my question is metadata automation becoming foundational for reasons other than just helping people find things easily?
Yes, absolutely. You would put your finger on exactly the right shift. Metadata, again, used to be about search and being able to find something. What's changed is that metadata is now becoming the connective tissue for automated marketing compliance workflows. It's not just searching faster, it's because downstream systems, so think of your compliance engines, your distribution platforms, your rights management tools, those all in the AI world need structured data to function. So if a piece of content isn't correctly tagged with its market, the product claims, the intended audience, regulatory jurisdiction, your compliance automation just can't do its job. So metadata is becoming that foundational instruction set so that every automated workflow can touch content. And that massive jump tells me that teams are starting to really figure it out. What I'd watch for next, and I would be very careful to see and monitor the quality of metadata and whether or not that quality is good enough to be trusted for high stakes compliance decisions. So that's really the next frontier where I see marketing compliance going. And just in general, in the AI world, I was thinking about this. There's a concept called context engineering, and that's this discipline of giving AI agents the right structured information to make those reliable decisions to help you and your marketing teams deal with that massive content through automation. And metadata is essentially the input layer. Like without it, you can generate fluent, generic content that looks really impressive, but it doesn't mean anything. And it's one of the reasons, and you and I have talked about this a lot, why we're so passionate about meaningful AI. And metadata is certainly a piece of that.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. I think the last topic I wanted to get with you on maybe zooms out a little bit from just marketing and kind of goes into the general workforce, but I'll start with marketing. So I think like when it comes to marketing, like global jobs headlines were pretty dominated by layoffs in 2025 as a result, in some cases, of AI. And a lot of them was in the tech sector, a lot of like content editing jobs, also entertainment, studio jobs, things like this. I know also legal
Yeah.
as well in terms of like entry level legal firms in general too, as like many AI content creation and content editing software became more mature, it effectively became like in some cases like I would say in 2024 not as good as an intern, and then in like today I think it's yeah like really good intern as long as you have somebody who really knows what they're doing to monitor to control it, like definitely not autonomous in most cases. um in terms of what's happening with marketers, I'm seeing roles like um, AI operations manager
Yes.
open up, which is pretty exciting actually, because I think in the best cases, it's somebody who's a really good marketer who actually could actually be in charge of a team of people, but is also suited to if they have the ability to look at things the right way, put the right inputs in,
Yeah.
measure the outputs, things like that, actually manage agents.
Yeah.
What are you seeing and what kind of roles are you seeing evolve?
Yeah, and it feels like it's the question of our times, like the year at the moment. And maybe I'll jump in specifically with marketing, as you said. I think that we're finding now is that AI it's not replacing marketing headcount at all. And it's not replacing headcount in other industries either necessarily. It's that I think AI is dramatically expanding the surface area of marketing. So you
Yeah.
need more people to manage that bigger operation. So the roles that are growing are, exactly the ones that you would expect. So you mentioned like AI workflow managers. These are the people that sit at the intersection of creative and governance. I think what is shrinking, what is going away, are those pure execution roles. So the people that, whose entire job was manually resizing assets or
Mhm.
manually checking that every social media post had the right disclaimer. So there is a real restructuring story. The most interesting hires that I'm seeing and hearing from customers are people who have both that creative intuition and that systems thinking. So it's not just being able to execute a workflow, but it's being able to design a workflow and to talk to
Yeah.
your agent about that. And so the people that are being successful right now are the people that can really thrive with AI and have that more creative lens on it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you said one thing. as well that I think is really critical to touch on before we close, which is that now I will say, like, our platform data is skewed pretty heavily toward highly regulated industries, right?
Mm.
So if you think about, there's some sectors in there that have had an up and down year, like travel, hospitality, things like that. But then you also have like banking,
Yeah.
where like 2025, 2026, it might have been like maybe the best time all time to be a banker. Right? And so actually 2/3 of the companies actually grew marketing headcount, not by a lot. But the point is they didn't shrink because of this, which I think I love what you said about increasing the surface area of it, because I think in some ways the agentic marketing and AI operations in general can actually move across departments
Yes.
to actually help maybe overall efficiency. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And I believe it was Scott Brinker who said this recently. We're seeing, yeah, AI is infiltrating the stack, but it's complementing the existing tools and people here. We see only like 30% of marketing teams said they were replacing existing SaaS functionalities. If you're a CMO right now, you're not going, how do I use AI to make the same thing cheaper? You're asking, what can I do now that I couldn't do before? And how does this change my seat at the table? How does this kind of bleed over into those legal risk and compliance teams, bleed over into sales? And how can I make a greater, better connective tissue and a bigger footprint for marketing?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The thing I would add to that too is in some cases, it would probably, at least where the technology has arrived at now, it might be at a point where you might not need to increase headcount as much as you did, whether you're in marketing compliance or in content creation, something like that. I think the thing though is it's like these are really smart tools for really smart, experienced people. And boy, are they maybe not great tools for people who don't know how to operate them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I hear from customers and would caution others is there is a lot of short-term thinking that you can solve some of these problems with just AI point solutions bolted on to your existing workflow or your existing stack. And to your point on some of these regulated industries, what creates a durable position is having that domain context as well. It's that accumulated domain intelligence that feeds into your metadata, your audit infrastructure, and understanding the marketing context and landscape in your industry. And that's not something you can spin up in a weekend hackathon. That's taking, again, all the knowledge of all of the workers that you had and just increasing that surface area beyond what they've done before.
Amazing. Listen, this has been great. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an awesome report. I'm so excited about this.
So that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on this special edition of the Brand Intelligence Podcast. To learn more about our predictions on content marketing and compliance, download the full 2026 Content Marketing Trends Report at intelligencebank.com.